Once the largest high school in the city of Calgary. Now, this building is abandoned and is currently under demolition. Abandoned since 2018. Join me as we look into the nearly 70-year-long history of Viscount Bennett High School. Enjoy. Following World War II, like most cities in North America, Calgary would experience economic prosperity and a population boom. Due to socio-economic trends at the time, many cities would create suburbs on the outer edges of their cities. Not only would Calgary follow in this trend, Calgary would start its transition from a small prairie city to a booming metropolis, doubling its population in less than 10 years. One of the areas that would see the brunt of this population growth is what most people would know as the inner Southwest area in modern times. Communities such as Richmond, Russ Carrick, Spruce Grove, Glenbrook, and Glendale would be established during the 1950s, and communities such as Killarney, Glengarry, and Shaganappi would undergo new development. The current high schools in the city built up to this point, Western, Central, and Crescent Heights, were not able to hold the city's new population boom, and a new high school was planned to be built right in the heart of this new booming area. In 1951, the Calgary Board of Education purchased a plot of land along Richmond Road from the Canadian Pacific Railway for $19,000, which would approximately be $230,000 in 2025. However, directly north of the location was the Anderson Stables, which was needed for the site for the new high school. The owner of this small location requested a hefty $65,000 for the land, which would be almost $800,000 in 2025. The Calgary Board of Education would fall into a land dispute for the following 2 years, the CBE offering $45,000, and when rejected, attempted twice to get the city to expropriate the land. With these failed attempts, the CBE finally accepted the offer and could start construction on the property. Construction was brief, the new high school opening in 1955 under the name of Viscount Bennett High School. The school opened at the modern-day location of where the communities of Richmond and Killarney Glengarry meet up, along Crowchild Trail Southwest. With a capacity decently over 2,000 students at the time, it was well and far the largest high school in the city of Calgary when it first opened. With the two-floor design, the school's area being about 250,000 square feet, or approximately 24,000 meters squared. For context how large that is, it's about the size of Pacific Place Mall or Westbrook Mall. The school opened as both a junior high and a senior high, a practical design which was common for high schools at the time, which has since become a rarity. Viscount Bennett High School was named after Richard Bedford Bennett, a New Brunswick-born businessman who moved to Calgary and would grow to become one of Alberta's most prolific politicians. R.B. Bennett was one of the earliest leaders of the Conservative Party of Alberta, and would be involved in provincial politics until 1917, when he got involved with federal politics. This eventually led R.B. Bennett, first Viscount of Canada, becoming the 11th Prime Minister of Canada under a majority government under the Conservative Party. As an homage to R.B. Bennett, the school was named after him, and the school's crest was modeled after the personal arms of Bennett. Viscount Bennett High School was a massive success, with it already experiencing a problem with overcrowding by the year 1960. Not wanting to introduce a shift system to the school, plans for an expansion would go underway. Construction for the expansion started during the summer of 1961 and was finished during the summer of 1962. Students in the fall of 1962 were greeted with 15 new classrooms under new wing, an expansive wood shop, a new library near the main entrance, and a new student lounge area. These are the good times, the peak, the pinnacle. Soon after, Viscount Bennett would reach its peak student population of over 2,100 students. It would become one of Calgary's most highly acclaimed schools. Peter Kent, former news anchor for the CTV, CBC, and Global, would eventually go on to be a part of Stephen Harper's cabinet. Described life in Viscount Bennett as like Riddle High from the movie Grease. Pretty cheerleaders and a few guys lucky enough to have a car. The school was known for its interesting and unique decoration choices, such as the shark that hung from the ceiling of the library, and quarters which had facades similar to storefronts, like a mall. At the center of it all was a cafeteria with overhead skylights with a pyramid-like design. The school featured an interior courtyard, but also featured an outdoor passage area. Viscount Bennett arguably was the best high school in the city at the time. It featured so much, and despite its large size, He had one of the most tight-knit communities of any school in the city. Enjoy it while it lasts. It's all downhill from this point on. One interesting thing of note from around this time was the creation of R.B. Bennett School in Bowness. R.B. Bennett School was constructed in 1954 under the Bowness School Board, with the city of Bowness being annexed by Calgary in 1962. It created an oddity, the CBE having 2 schools named after Bennett. Pretty interestingly about R.B. Bennett School is that school would end up closing. Eventually, it would become abandoned during the 2010s, around the same time as Viscount Bennett. So, for a time, Calgary actually there was only 2 schools in Calgary named after R.B. Bennett, and at the same time, both of them were abandoned. Both of them were abandoned during the same time. I don't know, I find that pretty cool. In 1967, upgrades to the school including an expansion of the library, 2 new science rooms, and a business education suite were approved, but did not start construction until 1971, with it being completed for the 1972 school year. In 1963, Ernest Manning High School opened up nearby, with it originally being opened in the community of Carrick, just a few kilometers away from Viscount Bennett. Shortly after, Central Memorial High School opened in 1968, just a few kilometers away in the community of North Glenmore Park. At first, Viscount Bennett High School's student enrollment wouldn't be affected, but throughout the 1970s, Viscount Bennett would start to slowly decline. These new schools would represent part of Viscount's decline, but there were multiple factors at play. Communities such as Sinalta, Carrick, Bankview, and Killarney Glengarry would start to slowly decline around this time, with communities such as Sinalta and Bankview becoming rundown and crime-ridden by the time the 1990s came around. Sinalta and Bankview were seen as some of the worst communities in the city around this time, alongside communities such as Forest Lawn, the East Village, and Victoria Park. It didn't help that Sinalta and Bankview both fell into the school's catchment area, and both were in very close proximity to the school, but even these weren't all that was hurting Viscount Bennett's enrollment. Throughout the 1970s, Crowchild Trail was also built, with several communities being split in half, ripping apart communities such as Richmond and Sinalta. One of the side effects from this was 24th Street Southwest no longer existing, and Richmond Road being split apart and no longer connecting. Both of these roads served as both major vehicular and pedestrian connections to the school, and the school would become less and less convenient for students to go to, especially with schools such as Ernest Manning having much more convenient locations. Crowchild Trail wouldn't even have any road connections to any of the nearby streets around Viscount either, negating any positives the highway might have had for the school. The start of the initial decline of the communities around Viscount Bennett, Crowchild Trail's creation, and the opening of other high schools nearby helped to facilitate the decline of Viscount Bennett High School. By the time 1980 came around, student enrollment at Viscount Bennett High was as low as 850 students. The school kept on declining from this point, with future estimates putting the student enrollment levels by the year 1990 at less than 300 students, despite the school having a capacity well over 2,000 students. The CBE was facing significant pressure to close the school, it being seen as a drain on resources. During the summer of 1984, the senior high portion of the school was discontinued, and the school was fully closed during the summer of 1985. From this point on, the school was used by many smaller charter schools, that being divided into smaller sections. The Viscount Bennett Centre, as it would now be named, would be home to Chinook Learning Services, a school for adult education. Westmount Charter School would also join Chinook as being a tenant at Viscount Bennett from 2001 to 2011. This is where most of the post-Viscount activity in the building would come from. As the area nearby had declined and the building was kept in rough condition, some creepy and scary stuff started to occur around the property. In March 1997, gunshots were fired inside the building. thankfully not hitting anyone. In September 2000, one of the students at Chinook was violently mobbed and stabbed repeatedly in a swarming attack on the front steps of the school. These incidents would deter potential schools such as Foundations for the Future from opening up inside the building, and people were scared off from potentially being students from the different schools inside the building. The building was starting to deteriorate from this point on. It wasn't kept in good condition. An inspection done of the property in 2006 found that the building had extremely bad asbestos contamination, rotting window seals, and multiple fire code violations, among other issues. The tenants from inside would take some smaller steps to fix some of the issues, but the building needed over $1 million worth in repairs. Despite some of the issues the building would suffered with, work was put in to fix some of the more pressing issues. The building would still house some tenant. In 2011, Westmount Charter School would find a new building and could finally relocate campuses, not having to use the aging structure. From this point on, Chinook Learning Services would be the only tenant inside the building, and over time, different parts of the structure such as the basement were sectioned off and no longer in use. In August 2018, the City of Calgary condemned the building due to the mounting issues inside the structure, and Chinook Learning Services would have to relocate. The last activity inside the building was the FX network using the structure to film the mini-series A Teacher inside the building in 2019. When filming for the series ended, the structure was fully abandoned and would stop any and all maintenance. For the first year, security was tight and the building was kept in alright condition. However, this would all change during the pandemic of 2020. With no security, people breaking into the building would become common, and squatters would frequently use the building as shelter. Unlike the other two places I've covered thus far on my Abandoned Places series, this building never really fell into that bad of decay. The building was never really trashed, and it didn't have a big problem with vandals or scrappers. The only people who would really use the structure when abandoned were urban explorers and homeless people, thus it never really got all that bad. Security would be installed at the property in 2021, but was kept minimal. All things considered, it wasn't that difficult of a property to get into, with me exploring it in May 2023. Shortly after I explored it though, about 2 weeks, the property was sold to the Minto Group. From this point on, the building would get pretty extensive security, including silent alarms and patrols. Under Minto, the property would then undergo plans for demolition and redevelopment. The original plans for the Viscount Bennett site was for mixed-use high-rise apartments, akin to those you'd find in a downtown area. The project was certainly ambitious and would have helped with the massive housing crisis Calgary still finds itself in. Despite losing a massive historic building, most people were overall in support for this new project. This being said, there was minor pushback from residents due to how much supply this would add on to the market. This, sadly, was enough to cancel the original plans for the project, and Minto would have to go back to the drawing board. Minto would then propose a new downgraded 1,200 unit housing development with mid-rises on the land of Viscount Bennett. Following this new proposal, the City of Calgary and Minto would go through a lengthy public hearing process on the development. Not much would happen with the property for 2 years except the continuation of the extensive security. This was until very late 2024, when demolition would start on the property, starting on the south side of the building. The public hearing process would end, and the new housing proposal was accepted on April 8, 2025, finally putting a pin in the story of Viscount Bennett. As of May 2, 2025, the vast majority of Viscount Bennett High School is demolished. Just some of the northwest wing exists, and some of the basement. I think there's a lot to take away from the story of Viscount Bennett High. Even if a place is the largest, the greatest, the best, it can still crash and burn. You can plan something to be successful, but there's some stuff completely out of the control of the people behind a project. Stuff that can be completely unknowable. Cities are dynamic places. They constantly change. It is impossible to predict how they will change. It is important to document local history, as the stories from our local areas can easily be lost to time. If there's a building that you hold dear to you, from a local mall to a high school to a recreation center, I recommend taking the time to photograph and video it. You never know if it will still be around even in like 20 years from now. That's part of what makes abandoned buildings interesting. They are buildings which have reached the very end of their life cycles, ones that have seen the test of time. They are relics of the past that deserve to be properly documented before they are fully gone. If you're interested in learning more about this property, you can look for the Viscount Bennett 1955 and 1976 book from the Calgary Central Library. It is a look at the history of the school, made back when the school still existed. Created by some of the administration of the school. I recommend taking a look at it if you have the time. And if you're a local historian, I recommend making like an online archive of it for somewhere, such as the Wayback Machine. You'll definitely do a service to everyone if you're able to do that. For episode 4, I plan to cover Eau Claire Mall in Calgary, a location which I hold very close to me, one which I visited quite frequently before it closed. If you have any photos or videos of it, please share them with me. My contacts, such as my email and Discord, will be linked in the description of the video if you have any. Hey, thanks for making this far. This is by far the most time I've spent on any of my videos. This is like, as of like mostly being finished, there's probably a little bit more I have to do. Currently I've spent 15 hours on this video. Definitely a lot more than any of my other videos besides maybe the Chinatown Mall. Thanks y'all for watching. If you want to like see more videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to check the description, see if there's I'll link my Abandoned Places series in the description. I have a video on Chinatown Mall and the Ogden Legion, both Albertan locations. For episode 4 it'll be another Calgary location, but episode 5 I plan to do a place in Indiana. So yeah, it'll start off with my own province, but I'll expand from there. I want to give a special thanks to my channel members, Inject and XDN. Thank you so much. Your support makes content like this possible. And thanks to everyone who made it thus far. It really means a lot. Thank you.